Had a chance to talk to Steve Clifford and Dennis Smith Jr. yesterday. We recapped their comments with a guest, an OG guest, today on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
You are Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. As the world's largest therapy service, BetterHelp has matched 3 million people with professionally licensed and vetted therapists available 100% online. Learn more and save 10% off your first month at BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your pods. That includes YouTube. If you're watching YouTube, you can see the face of one David Walker. You can follow him on Twitter at David B. Walker. David, thanks so much. It's good to see you. It's been a little too long. I feel like it's been a while this time around, but I'm glad that you're back.
I feel like it's been the appropriate amount of time.
No, it's been
I'm glad to be back.
It's been too long.
All right. No, good to be back, guys.
You need to join us more often. Yeah, it is. Even though there's not the greatest amount of content to talk about as far as the Hornets go, no wins to talk about, we can discuss the comments from one Steve Clifford and Dennis Smith Jr. yesterday. Got a chance to talk with them at the Cornucopia event that the Hornets do. They've been doing it for 12 straight years now. Very cool to see 1,000 Thanksgiving meals prepared for people. It feeds 4,000 people benefit from that. So the Hornets really getting involved in charity once again. And it's been like that. I mean, honestly, in the last 5 years, they've been at the forefront of some philanthropic type of things in the NBA. So very cool.
Been giving away wins too.
Yeah, it's been nice of them to be able to do that for NBA teams. They've been, each team, what is that? 15 people benefit from each win handed out by the Charlotte Hornets, not including staff. So really, really philanthropic there as well. Steve Clifford wasn't so happy about that. Look, he's still coming around the whole charity thing, handing out wins. But he was happy with Dennis Smith Jr.'s performance, and we talked about that. We praised DSJ constantly yesterday, and so it was nice for him to be the player guest because I did want to talk about some positive things with him. What's interesting about Dennis Smith Jr., and we've said it a lot, I just want him to be on the court at the same time as LaMelo, because I feel like it's very visible when Dennis Smith is out there, the defense is a lot better. When LaMelo was out there, the offense is so much better. And for the simplest of reasonings, I would like for both of them to be on the floor so the defense and the offense can not take a step back and they can both thrive. And DSJ really wants to play with LaMelo too. I asked him about that. He's like, yeah, man, God, I want to be out there on the court at the same time. And then it was kind of funny. He would pause when I asked about LaMelo. He said, man, he's just really good. I mean, he's really talented. just kind of pausing, looking off in a daze. I feel like, David, if there's something for us to look forward to, besides everybody just coming back from injury, all the players, LaMelo and DSJ in the backcourt could be something really fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously one of the biggest surprises around the league this year. It's a shame for a lot of reasons the Hornets haven't gotten more wins, so he could get a little more pub. Although, they got off that fast start and people were kind of singing his praises, and I know that they've kept his eyes on him, but you just really want to see him out there. And he makes a difference, guys. I mean, think about that little bit of time when he was out, just on the defensive front. He really makes a difference, and there's no way they could plan for this. I mean, they get all the credit in the world for bringing him along, and it feels like he and Clifford really do have a special bond. So, hopefully they can turn this into a longer term relationship, because it sounds like both sides are obviously making out well with it. But to see him and LaMelo, that's like the last piece that we haven't seen for a good bit this season, and it could make a difference for him.
Well, it's amazing. It's amazing to hear him, Walker, say that he would turn his attention even more to the defensive end, right? Because he's already fifth in the league in deflections, and with names like Paul George, Alex Caruso, DeLon Wright, DeJounte Murray, OJ Anunoby, Kelly Oubre Jr., who is ninth in the league in deflections.
Hello.
He's been getting it. There have been a couple where the basketball just kind of falls in his lap, but also he's been getting more involved in the passing lanes. I know I've been pleasantly surprised with Kelly Oubre this year, and the shooting's worse. But yet still, I've been
well, and so maybe there you go. Maybe there's where like the shifts can happen, right? More defensive responsibility for Dennis Smith Jr., less defensive responsibility for Kelly, and some of these, different looks in the lineup, and maybe Kelly can get more focused on scoring from outside a little bit more. But right now, DSJ leads the team in contested 3-point shots. He leads the team in deflections. He's already a defensive menace. It's going to be amazing to see him play alongside LaMelo because, they need transition offense created by defense. They need it because their half-court offense this season has been so awful. It might get a little bit better with LaMelo, but even in those 3 games where LaMelo came back, that half-court offense didn't look like super stellar. Maybe it gets to a point after he's been back for a little while, but they need that transition offense created by steals. They're also missing that from Cody Martin.
Well, yeah, and you mentioned it, right? I did ask the type of impact that they could have on the court together. And Dennis Smith Jr. did say, I already give a lot of attention to both ends of the floor, but if LaMelo was playing, I would just go all out on defense. It would just be 100%, and I could pay that much more attention on defense. And I mean, you like hearing it because LaMelo is going to be the ball handler anyway. I like LaMelo playing alongside a ball handler with DSJ. I think LaMelo is very good with another ball handler on the floor at the same time. But yeah, either way, I think it would really help. Yeah,
it's strange though, David, isn't it, to hear DSJ say that? Because I think back to the beginning of his career. And look, Dennis Smith Jr. loved to take shots. Like he was definitely like making his money, taking and missing a lot of shots, unfortunately, and that's why he had several stops. But it's interesting to say now, in this particular situation, what feels like a last chance for him, he is all about the defensive end. And in fact, I've seen him kind of, and I don't know if you've seen this, David, I've seen him kind of be a little bit even reticent to take shots at certain points.
Offensive end. Yeah. You there are spots where you're like, go ahead and take that one or take it to the hole or look for yourself to score. But he's really deferring, really playing the team game. Again, I mean, I think the connection with Clifford, you can't overlook that. It has got to have something to do with it. And to your point, Doug, I mean, yeah, he's seen the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, how this can go the other way. If he doesn't dedicate himself to, probably being that pest, that defensive guy. And it's good to see he still does have some of the offensive skills, that he made a name for himself in college and early on in his pro career. So just a really fun story. Certainly probably the brightest spot for the Hornets this season, which is insane to think about, but he has been that good.
I don't think there's any question about it. He's been the brightest spot for the Charlotte Hornets. And you're right. The relationship with Steve Clifford, he shouted that out when I asked him what went into this turnaround. He says he gives so much credit to Steve Clifford. He says that they view the game the same way. Kept saying that when talking about his head coach and how he gave Dennis Smith an opportunity. They shared a phone call. And, in that phone call, I think they both really shared the same type of philosophy on what it takes to win basketball games. And the last thing I'll say about DSJ is he really bought in. You're right about the whole light at the end of the tunnel thing. He says he realized what he had to do to stay in the league, and he really wanted to do so, right? We know the story about him possibly going to the NFL if it wasn't working out in the NBA, which would have been insane. But here he is now playing very well for the Charlotte Hornets, and he talked about just how this is what it's going to take. So I'm all in. Let's figure out a way to thrive in this type of role, and he's made himself some money doing it. And probably a decent amount.
Maybe he saw, hey, he looked at the Panthers, looked at the Hornets. He was like, opportunity, I could be right there. I mean, same city. Don't even have to leave.
Especially when Christian McCaffrey was traded, like maybe running back spot. Now, Deontay Foreman's been good, but Dennis Smith Jr. certainly could have done that as well. He made the right call.
As much suffering as the Hornets have endured, he still made the right call.
And he's what, 23?
I think he's 24.
24?
Steve said 25. Let's figure it out. Who is right about Dennis Smith Jr.'s
It's one of those
age?
For sure.
All three at 24. He's 24, and he'll be 25 in a couple days. 25th. Happy early birthday.
Oh, right. Happy birthday. Well, I mean, look at that though. That's very still young. I mean, he's only at State for 1 year. So I mean, gosh, his career is by no means over. But yeah, I mean, he was. It's a reclamation project, and he's got plenty of time to turn it around and keep going. So. Really cool to see. I hope they can, turn this into more of a long-term thing, because that's the guy you want back there with LaMelo, 100%. Right? A stocky guy, your free safety, playing defense. So, yeah,
perfect fit.
Cool to see.
Absolutely perfect fit. Okay, coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
Wanted to recap more of Steve Clifford's comments. He had a lot to say, not only about the season in general. I asked him about not wanting to be a part of a rebuild at the coaches' luncheon, how that's kind of turned around, if it's turned around. Plus, he had thoughts on Kai Jones, Jalen McDaniels, PJ Washington, lots of other things Steve Clifford did have to say. This episode is brought to you by Turo. It's the world's largest car sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want, whenever you want it, from a community of local hosts. Browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the US, UK, Canada, and coming soon to Australia. Book a spacious SUV or minivan for a family road trip. You can get a classic or luxury car for a special event, birthday, or even holiday. You can find affordable economy cars if you're on a budget and just need to get from A to B. Test drive that new electric vehicle you've had your eye on to see how it fits with your everyday life. And many Turo hosts can even deliver the car right to you. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and exclusions apply. Forget boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com. More Steve Clifford comments coming up next. Locked On Hornets.
You are listening to the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Thoughts on the news about Cody Zeller's injury?
That's a tough one, man. I mean, what the doing, dude?
He's just injured, man. It's okay.
It's
Look,
just, he's
injuries
having to deal
happen.
with an injury.
He didn't want to get injured, okay, David? But
sorry, guys. I just had someone jump out in front of my vehicle. That was unforeseen.
Only on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Hornets your first listen today. Make your next listen Locked On Sports today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Before we get to Kai Jones and some of what I would call Cliff's guys right now, remember we would try to figure that out as he was being ushered into the second Clifford era, who are going to be the players that... Cliff's crew, absolutely. There's a lot you could go with, and Kai Jones is one of them right now. I did ask him about that comment because, and Doug, I know you brought that point up a couple times at the coaches' luncheon. He did say that he didn't want to be a part of a rebuild, and I asked him about evaluating the roster at the beginning, understanding the injuries are unforeseen. To use the words from David Walker, as soon as he almost hit a person driving a car, that was unforeseen, and now here he's having to deal with this 14 losses on the season. How do you deal with that? And he did talk about how, yes, there's a lot of basketball left, but we also know Steve Clifford is not one to really sugarcoat things. He says they do have to play a lot more with a lot more physicality. He talked about defensive rebounding being a huge thing for them, and how that has not improved and that needs to improve. But he does think that once they get guys back, that they can play a lot better. So he didn't say anything as far as now we're in a rebuild and I want to back out, nor would he ever say that. There wouldn't be any time he'd admit that. But just the evaluation of the roster, from a coach in that situation where you do want to be a head coach. But remember, at that luncheon, he talked about wanting to accomplish something in the playoffs, because any coach that's worth anything about their career or can point to their career and say we had a success, it's having playoff success. And that's what every coach wants. And he wanted that pretty badly when he was mentioning that at the luncheon, and you're not going to get that this year. So you kind of have to stick it out. It's almost turning into this, maybe not rebuild because you're not tearing it down to the nuts and bolts, but
not yet.
It's a certain,
not building it.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, you're not getting rid of LaMelo. So, LaMelo's at least going to be here to help you out. Who knows what happens in the lottery? I don't know what else is going to happen with any other player. But yeah, interesting there from Steve Clifford. Now, hopefully Kai Jones can continue to improve. And Doug, I know you have been a little impressed with what Kai Jones has given you as he plays like 5 minutes, but then 7, then 8. Starting to ascend, getting some run with this team.
Well, how could you not be impressed? He's getting quality minutes. So obviously there's some trust there. Cliff mentioned Kai Jones is one of the players that is improving without getting significant playing time, sort of going against that traditional wisdom that guys need burn in order to actually improve their game. Kai doing it off the floor and then showing it on the floor. Obviously there's some things that he still has to work on defensively. He looks, maybe a step slow sometimes. And, offensively, he still wants to do too much. There was, after the dunk was amazing. The dunk was incredible. But after the dunk, there was a play where he was just like begging for the ball. He was begging for the ball. He looked like this. You have to go on YouTube to see what he looked like. He was begging for the ball, kind of telegraphing it, and then he put up a little hook shot that didn't work. So, there's some obviously some issues that he still has to work out. But he's bringing like a level of energy and intensity to the floor that I think is a big reason why he's getting minutes right now, because he's been a little spark. Clifford's shortening the rotation, right? I mean, really, it's like an 8.5-man rotation if you count Kai Jones. So he's slipping Kai Jones in there because he feels like he can give them not only a little bit of matchup difficulty, you get a little bit of a height advantage at the power forward position, even though you're playing him out of position, but also you're getting that spark of energy, and I think he's brought that in and it's helped the team.
And look, guys, it feels like at this point everyone has gotten a shot, right? Like everyone has had an opportunity to show what they can do out there in real time, in live action. You know what I mean? So now it's Kai's turn. And he's turning a few heads. So it's good to see. It's just such a shame for Clifford, because I think you're right, Walker. He wanted to get back to the playoffs. Like, he viewed this roster. I mean, this is probably his most talented roster as an NBA head coach. I mean, as constructed, prior to the disaster that was this summer. So, I mean, there was a possibility to do that the way they were set up coming off last season, and for it to just, fall apart before it even got started. It sucks for Clifford, but he's, the wins just aren't coming. He's trying to give these guys some shine on the floor, some minutes on the floor, which, his first time here, Doug, that's what people were banging on him for, right? Would never play the young guys. At least that was the perception. Leaned heavily on the veterans. And so, maybe he's, trying a few new things out, but I think that's what they have to do at this point. If the wins aren't going to be there, you got to get some of these young guys out there. They've had opportunities to do things, and it seems like he's crafting his crew, as you guys said.
Well, he's still static on the starting unit. The starting unit has changed because of injuries, but I think he's still, really committed to finding a starting unit that he's not going to go away from, even in the midst. I mean, we're talking about 11 losses in the last 12 games, and yet things are staying static. And I think a lot of people are wondering why. Like, why not make a change at the center position, particularly? And it feels like, Walker, that Clifford is just trying to wait until he can get everyone back. And I don't know how long you can maintain that, but I understand that players are playing out of position, and he doesn't want to judge those players. Yeah. But at what point does the levee break and say, all right, how many losses do we have to take before we finally make some decisions here?
It is funny. So many times teams will go the exact opposite direction of a head coach they just fired. So they get rid of JB. You mentioned Steve Clifford being pretty heavily set in the rotation sets that he has, in the groupings, right? And especially the starting lineup, where Steve Clifford has always found it important for guys to get in a rhythm. If you were to tell, there's 4 pillars with JB, there's the board, not plural, not boards, not rebounds, but the board for JB, right? The vernacular for Steve Clifford is inside out. It's getting into a rhythm. He's always been key on that, especially for guys coming back from injury. So we've heard it a lot this year. And he is set in that starting lineup because he wants to see as many minutes possible logged, just so he gets a feel, hey, is this actually not working, or and do we need to go away from it for sure? Where JB, JB, man,
it's not working. Like, it's not working. It's like statistically, they are one of the worst starting units in the association. It's not working.
Right. Well, with JB, it would be a minute seeing it happen. Oh, I don't like it. All right, let's try something different. Yes, you're right. He's asking a lot of players to do more than what you might with everybody back. And when he said that, I asked specifically about PJ Washington, who is taking different shots. We have seen him expand his role. And I said this last show. I think we're starting to see the max point for PJ, where he can give you high 20 scoring games. He can give you the early 30, even mixing in some stuff, putting the ball off the deck. There is that a part of his game now. That's great, but not consistently where, okay, let's just give it to PJ and him go get you buckets all the time. And I ask about PJ, whether it was injuries, whether you really want him to head to that place where his game could reach that consistently, or if this is all experimental and you're still just trying to figure out what PJ can do. And he said there's a lot of both, or there's a lot of all of that mixed in when you see PJ doing what he's doing on the floor. He was adamant that PJ is not just some only spot up shooter. That's not the only thing he is. But he did say when guys come back, it was easy to tell Cliff meant PJ can go back to a role that he's a lot more comfortable with, which I completely agree. You saw his efficiency go up last year when he wasn't taking nearly as many shots. And I think there can be some happy medium. The strong reaction, Doug, what's that from?
Well, because forget offense. What did PJ say coming into this season? He said he's a defender. He was going to
lean all into defense. Yeah.
Right. And so that's really where it's forget offensive efficiency. He was talking about wanting to come in and be a defensive leader on this team. Now, this was pre-DSJ, kind of explosion, but they still need that. I mean, his block, I was shout out James Plowright from SI put a stat up talking about how, his blocks have gone way down over the past, 5-6 games. And he's not. It's not like he's not fouling more. It's not like he's the activity's not there. He's just not blocking shots. It's a weird thing, but like defensively, he hasn't been as good. Offensively, he's expanding. You're right. We've maxed that out. We've the team I think has maxed out Terry Rozier as playmaker because it's obviously affecting his ability to knock down shots. They've maxed out Plumlee as playmaker. Point Plumlee. Like nobody wants to see more of that. Yes. So that's everybody. It seems like almost everyone except for Kelly Oubre Jr., who is taking full advantage of this opportunity, is playing out of position. And again, I think at some point you have to ask yourself, is this sustainable if we keep losing games? I think a change has to be considered if LaMelo, if his absence is going to be long term.
You're saying change, roster change, lineup change. Locker room change. All of the above.
Oh, I think all of the above have to be taken into consideration. But one is controlled by the coach, and one is controlled by the front office. I mean, I think the coach can control, who plays and what the minute distribution is. But I think DSJ needs more minutes, and I think they have to consider, again, what are they getting from certain players? I understand this isn't like a video game. You have to understand that like Terry Rozier is a starter and he gives you certain things, but I think they have to make all considerations or continue to lose games. I don't know. I mean, to me, that's the choice.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps that's a choice they're making, right? I mean, you guys are kind of hinting at it. I mean,
it's a sneak tank conspiracy here.
Well,
hey, Kai Jones, that dunk. I want to ask this before we get out of the segment real quick. Kai Jones, was that the best dunk in Hornets history?
No, it wasn't. It was amazing. It was
incredible.
Well, give me another dunk.
The craziest.
Give me another example.
I mean, Miles, you could go back to the last 2 years
that's
for Miles and probably pick a couple out.
I mean, that's why I did. That's what do you want me to do here? I mean, Miles dunks were crazy. The Clint Capella dunk itself was probably the best in game dunk.
There was a Barron had a couple.
Baron Davis
had one on KG.
Look, rookie MKG had a big dunk in the lane.
What about Terry on KD?
Davis.
Remember Terry Rozier's dunk?
My answer. You know my answer. Best dunk in Hornets / Bobcats history.
Byron Mullins.
I mean, destroying ruined LaMarcus Aldridge's career. Nobody wants to talk about it, but LMA was never the same after that.
And at this point, he jumped from the 3-point line to dunk that ball. I mean, that's where the legend has grown.
We cannot be a panel of 3 white guys and actually seriously put Byron Mullins first over everyone else.
Go watch the dunk. No, I'm sorry. Go watch the dunk.
No. It has to be mentioned.
That's fine.
It cannot be. No, it's not taking first place.
It can't take number one.
I'm just saying, go watch the dunk. It's not because people like to talk about this Gerald Henderson dunk. It's put in a lot of these lists, but it was a thrunk. This was not a thrunk. This was not throw it in. It's an incredible dunk. I don't care who it was or what they look like. It was an incredible dunk.
Okay, coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
It's time to shoe some respect with David Walker, the authority on all things, not only just fashion, but the shoes for sure. So that's what we'll be talking about coming up, but not before we get to LinkedIn. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. You go to LinkedIn, you add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Show some respect. Coming up next, Locked On Hornets.
Is Locked On Hornets.
I'm glad we have YouTube now for everybody to see just how bulked you are. Can you give us a gun show flash real quick?
Oh, yeah.
Me and you, man. Look at that drape.
That's 100% grade A.
Look, here I am doing it. Look at these noodle arms right here. Look, they just flow.
We got it. Listen. Yep.
Yeah.
If you want chicken wings, if you've been starving for some chicken wings, this is the show for you, folks. YouTube.com/chicken wings.
It's time for more of the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Oh, Walker. Earth to Walker. Did you meet your mic?
I did. And you know what's really unfortunate is that I had the screen in which you guys were in. It went all the way to the left, and so I had to find the way to pull it back to the middle, so then I could unmute it. And so that was kind of a disaster all around, and I apologize.
Radio professional Walker Mail. Catch him every weekday, WFNZ 12 to 3 with his partner Wes.
We have dead air every 5 seconds because I don't turn my mic on. That's the promo. You heard it right there. All right, Doug, why don't you set David up for Shoe Some Respect? What did you have in store for talking about some of these shoes that are out there right now?
Well, I know setup necessary for David Walker, our resident shoe expert, the science of shoes. He's the shoe scientist, David Walker. I just want you to let us know what's going on in the sneaker world.
Well, real quickly, to go to segment 3 in our rundown that we have, so we have some of the stuff that we'll plan out, right? And then segment 3, it just says sneakers. So, I mean, I did not know where to go with that.
That's all it needs to say.
So, David, sneakers, please.
Sneakers, guys, very popular for your feet. For walking around. And this is the time of year, guys. We're heading into the holiday season. So I did want to hit on a couple things, a couple of big releases and stuff that you guys may have heard of, may not have heard of. I'm getting hit up left and right by cousins, friends. They're looking for shoes. How do I get them? Where do I go? My answer is always the same. The internet, guys, everything, you can find it on the internet. But last week, the Air Jordan brand, you've probably heard of this guy, Michael Jordan.
Michael Air Jordan.
Oh man, I thought you were gonna have the drop there. No drop today. Though. Okay. Yeah. So they re-released his first shoe, right? His first Chicago Air Jordan 1 last week. They did a bunch of releases. They kind of aged these things. I'm curious, Doug, where do you stand on pre-aging? Right. So they took these shoes, made them look a little old. They went a little too far. I saw some stores got some with mold on them. I think those are the extra special pairs. But
that's not real. That's not true. They had to send those back.
Yeah, no, that's the rumor out there on the internet. Wow. It's mold on some of these shoes, so they had to send those back. But Doug, these are like pre-aged, you know. So the midsole is a little yellow. The collar's a little like crispy. Where do you stand on that?
What I find comical about that is the idea that someone would put them on and then have to really preface when they show up to a party or they show up to some event and go, no, these are pre-aged. These are pre-aged. That's how I bought them. That's how they came. Don't worry about it.
It's just a tinge. It's just a hint. You have to kind of look for it, though. It's not like they stepped in. It's not like they have mold on them. It's not like they stepped in a mud puddle. They're just kind of pre-aged to make them look like they were from, say, 1985 and they got lost in the back room of a shoe store, something like that. No,
it feels a little. It feels a little like wearing non-prescription glasses. I mean, just go ahead and just wear the actual aged shoes and be an OG with it, or
Fair
just
enough.
get new shoes. But okay, that's still fine.
Yeah. I was a fan of it. I'm normally not a fan of going overboard with that, but it's this classic shoe, the Chicago one. He wore them right out of the gate. He wore them in Madison Square Garden right before he retired one time. So that was cool. The other one is the Nike Panda Dunk, guys. You guys may have seen this. It's the most popular shoe basically on the planet now. Everyone's trying to get their hands on it. If you're listening to this and you're looking for it for a Christmas present or something, it is releasing again on the Nike app Saturday, I believe, or next Saturday. I don't know. Check one of those. It's coming up again soon. Get it for the holidays. But what I wanted to touch on, dudes, we got a new LaMelo shoe coming out. He actually wore this. On court last week. This might be my favorite of the bunch, guys. It's a little more subdued. It's not quite as flashy as the orange ones, but it's got that nice little teal hit on the outsole there that goes up the back. I think it's a real sleek looking one. I like this one. What do you guys think?
I like the design. I'm just not an all black shoe fan. The whole slow thing, but I do think that looks pretty sweet too. I like go. And that's on the inside. So we were looking at the outside. That's the inside. No, I like that a little better with the teal hint on the inside of the shoes. Yeah, I like it a little better with that mixed in. No, I love the design though. I maybe in white, I think I would like it a little better.
Okay.
I do like
okay. And Doug, your favorite part? I know you want to call that out.
Well, I'm interested in what that color ends up looking like in real life because on the picture, to me, it looks like almost Carolina Panther blue. Not Hornets teal. Now maybe I'm going colorblind. I don't know, but it just doesn't.
Maybe you are, yeah.
It's more blue than like the teal green that you need to make that like Hornets teal. But I do like the fact that most of the shoe is black, and then the lettering is in that blue or teal or whatever it is that makes up the rare word. Because one of my things that I've talked about in these LaMelo shoes is like, I had to stare at it for a while to get, it says rare, which is part of his whole branding, one of one, rare, not from here. He's an alien. Got it. It's been rare to see him on the floor this season. That's been a big problem for the Charlotte Hornets, but that's beside the point. The point is, I like the way the lettering here shows up. It really is like hits you in the face. This is what it says, and I'm into it. I like this shoe. I don't know if I'll buy it, but I'm into this shoe.
Well, you have the other ones. You have the first edition, so I don't have any yet. So I'm eyeing this one. It comes out tomorrow, guys, on the 23rd. But yeah, I like how they did the rare. It's all based on his tattoos. Again, they went back to that again. There's a lot of Easter eggs in this shoe, so I like it, and it looked really great on court. To your point about the teal, Doug, I'll tell you, when he wore it with the teal uniforms, it matched perfectly. Okay. So I think it's closer to teal.
Yeah, the shoes that match the uniform perfectly. I know people want to get loud with their sneakers, and I'm for it. I actually like the loudness from the sneakers sometimes, but when it matches perfectly with the jerseys and the unis, those always look pretty damn good.
In this picture, in this side, and I've blown it up a little bit, so it's looking a little pixelated, but in this picture, it looks a little bit more tealy than the blue. But yeah, it's a cool looking shoe.
It is. I like the design.
Respect.
Yeah, and there you have it. Sneakers. Show some respect. That is the third segment. That's David Walker on Twitter at David B. Walker, helping us out once again to show some respect and also get his Hornets thoughts on the young season. Also, that's Doug Branson. Find his work on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. And I'm Walker Mail. You can check me out on WFNZ from 12 to 3 every weekday. Thanks for making us your first listen on Locked On Hornets. Remember to make your second listen Locked On Sports today, from the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports. Go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your pods. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.